In our small town, the forest wasn't just a place. It was part of a legend, a dark and chilling one. No one went there, especially after sunset. The older residents always repeated the same warning. If you hear a cry for help from the forest, don't go. It's not a person. I never believed in those stories. The forest seemed like any other, dark, dense, and unremarkable. But that changed the night I heard the cry. It happened near the edge of the forest, along the road. I was walking home late in the evening when I heard it. At first it was faint, as if coming from far away. "Help me, please." The voice was female, trembling with desperation. I stopped, my heart pounding. "Who's there?" I shouted toward the trees. There was no answer, only the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. I stared into the darkness of the trees, their silhouettes forming an impenetrable wall. The cry came again, louder this time. "Please help me." It sounded so desperate that I couldn't ignore it. Ignoring all the warnings I'd ever heard, I stepped past the forest's edge, leaving the safety of the road behind. The forest was far darker than I'd expected. The light from my flashlight seemed feeble, swallowed by the overwhelming shadows. "Hello? Where are you?" I called out, turning in circles. Only the sound of my footsteps and the wind in the branches replied. I pressed on, trying to follow the voice. "Here, help me." It called again. The voice was closer now, but there was something off about it. It felt hollow, devoid of true emotion, as if someone was merely repeating words. Branches scratched at my face, and dry leaves crunched underfoot. No matter how far I walked, the voice always seemed just out of reach. I suddenly felt a piercing sensation, as if unseen eyes were watching me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing, just darkness and trees whose shadows stretched unnaturally long. That's when I heard a whisper. It came from everywhere at once, quiet yet chilling. "You shouldn't have come." I wanted to turn back, but the path was gone. The trees all looked the same, and the trail seemed to shift beneath my feet. "Who's there? What's happening?" I shouted, panic creeping into my voice. Another scream rang out, sharp and piercing, from somewhere to my left. I ran toward it, desperate to find the source. Soon, I saw her. It was a woman, sitting on the ground with her face buried in her hands. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, and her dress was filthy, stained with something dark, blood perhaps. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, cautiously approaching her. She slowly lifted her head. Her face was deathly pale, and her eyes, they were black, completely void of life. "Why did you come?" she whispered. I froze. In that moment, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. The woman rose to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural, as if her body didn't fully belong to her. "You heard the call?" she asked, stepping closer. I backed away, my heart hammering in my chest. I just wanted to help." Her lips twisted into a grotesque smile. "It was an invitation. Now you're one of us." Suddenly, I heard footsteps all around me. Shapes began emerging from the darkness, shadowy figures with twisted faces and black, soulless eyes. They surrounded me, their whispers filling the air. "Stay with us." I turned and bolted, running blindly through the trees. Branches tore at my clothes, and roots clawed at my feet as if the forest itself was trying to trap me. The cries and whispers grew louder, closer. I ran until I tripped over a root, falling hard to the ground. My flashlight flew from my hand and went out. Now I was at the mercy of the darkness. I lay on the cold ground, the forest closing in around me. The shadows seemed alive, pressing against me, suffocating. The whispers grew louder, like a chorus of voices echoing in my mind. "You won't leave," they said, their tones dripping with malice. Suddenly, I heard my own voice echoing from the depths of the forest. "Please, help me." I froze in terror. It was an exact copy of what I'd shouted earlier, but now it sounded hollow, unnatural. Gathering what strength I had left, I tried to stand, but something cold clamped around my ankle. I screamed and looked down. A hand black as coal, with long, spindly fingers, had emerged from the ground, gripping me tightly. Its touch was ice cold, and I felt my strength draining away. I thrashed and kicked, desperate to free myself, but the hand held firm. In front of me, a shadow began to rise from the earth. It was the woman. Her face was lifeless, her empty eyes staring into mine. Her mouth didn't move, but her voice rang inside my head. "You belong to the forest now." I kicked harder, my foot finally breaking free. Stumbling to my feet, I ran as fast as I could, ignoring the pain in my leg. The forest seemed to shift around me. Trees moved, roots rose, and paths disappeared. The whispers became screams, deafening, as if the entire forest was alive and angry. I saw a glimmer of light ahead and sprinted toward it. But with each step, the presence behind me grew closer. "You'll never escape," the woman's voice echoed once more. And then I understood. The light wasn't salvation, it was a trap. I stood at the edge of the light, staring at a clearing filled with shadowy figures. They were motionless, but their glowing eyes pierced through the darkness, watching me. I turned to run, but the shadows behind me were even thicker now, leaving me nowhere to go. "This is your home now," the woman's voice whispered, as though it came from every direction. She emerged from the darkness, her body gliding unnaturally above the ground. "Everyone who comes here becomes part of the forest. Now you will call to them." "No," I screamed, "I won't become one of you." She floated closer, her face inches from mine. I could see every detail, cracks in her skin, hollowed sockets where her eyes should have been, and a twisted, grotesque smile. "But you already are," she said. The light around me vanished, plunging me into absolute darkness. I felt the cold seep into my bones as if I were being pulled into an endless void. I woke up at the edge of the forest, bathed in the soft glow of the morning sun. Birds chirped, and the wind rustled through the leaves as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I stared at my hands. They looked normal, but I felt different. Empty. Like a part of me had been left behind in the forest. Since that day, I've heard the cries every night. They call to me, pleading for help. And the worst part, they sound exactly like my own voice. The forest continues to call to others, and one day it will claim another.